you are someone who has spent so much time understanding inner and outer nature, and with your time as well in the cave. So we wanted to hear from you about, can you share how the observation of this inner and outer nature has shaped you?
No, that's too obscure.
It's too
Find
obscure.
something more.
Okay. How can we deepen our connection with nature? How can we deepen our connection with nature?
With nature?
Yes.
Go out and look at it. I mean, fortunately, Himachal is abundant in nature. So just go out and look. Look just at a simple little flower growing by the wayside. How perfect it is. We didn't make that. We couldn't make that. And all the insects, how extraordinary they are. They know exactly what to do, they cooperate with each other, they have been going for millions of years, and they're still with us. It's amazing. We could never cooperate as harmoniously as the ants do and the bees do, and even, flies, mosquitoes, each one of them is quite extraordinary. I mean, if you look at it, even just a small little insect, how perfect they are. And all around us, the trees, the grass, the weeds, we call them weeds, but actually, each one of them is very perfect in itself. So, nature is, as you know, very healing, right? It's always, no matter what we do to it, at the moment it's still there. It was very interesting, as you know, during the lockdown, how much, when we were not messing around, nature took over again, right? Growing up here and there, animals going all over. And they're not really encouraged by us, as you know. All the poisons that we put down and pulling things up which we don't agree with and so forth. So, the way to go out to nature is just to go out. And just sit there or lie there, hug a tree. It's very nice to hug a tree, right? And to feel that all of nature is so intelligent. And to recognize how seamlessly that all unites together without our interfering. And we live, you know this, we live on an extraordinary planet. There's nothing else that we know of that even comes near it. It's an amazing place. From this microscopic to the vast. So all it needs is for us just to open our hearts, our mind, and observe. And really, if we would stop interfering a little bit, it would probably be a very good thing for the whole planet. But the planet is alive. And the planet is highly intelligent, even down to the cellular level. It knows what it's doing. It's just extraordinary, really, when you think of it. And here we are living in the midst of it all. So yes, well done, nature.
This is a continuation to the next. It's a follow-up question. I've heard you recommend spending time in nature to those who are grieving. Can you share a little bit about that?
To do what?
to spend time in nature for those who are grieving.
Who are grieving. Well, again, I mean, we just said it. Nature is healing. And sometimes it can be very helpful just to lie out. Look at the sky, look at the clouds, look at the trees, look at the grass. Just feel that healing property which nature has. It's an incredible, I mean, it's very, very different to go out and be in nature than being in an artificial room somewhere, however beautifully designed that room may be. It's nothing compared with, you know, just going out, sitting on a hill or sitting by a lake, looking at water, looking at all the beauty around us, often very unplanned by us, just naturally manifesting. So, especially for people who live in towns, it's very important to sometimes just go out and go, you know, for walks or just sit or lie and allow the earth to support us. That can be very, very helpful if we are inwardly in pain, that the whole planet is with us and is there to help us to gradually heal. This is why also in time of grief it's good to do pilgrimage and to go to sacred places on the earth. Again, often they're out in nature, and if we go there and feel it's a very positive sense of well-being, and that is much more healing for us than more elaborate sort of psychotherapy and things like that. Our greatest psychotherapist is nature.
What does planet Earth need from humans at this time?
Need from what?
Humans.
It needs us to leave it alone. Truly, we mess up everything. It's more and more, this is the problem. Before, you know, people lived with nature and, you know, the little, you know, group of people and then lots of nature. Now there's lots of people and just little bits of nature. And yeah, I mean, I don't know why we are not more intelligent. We think we're very intelligent, but it really isn't true, because no animal would mess up its home and where it lives in the way that humans do. And basically, we're not doing very well. I mean, we've polluted the waters, we've polluted the land, we're polluting the sky now. How many of those things, satellites? Thousands now. We can't even leave the sky alone. We can't leave anything alone. I mean, humans really are very, very naughty, because they are just messing up everything. So the best thing we can do is to leave the earth to get on and do what it does best, which is to be itself, and stop interfering and polluting and poisoning everything. But it's all about money. And so therefore, anything that will, create more profit, then people can't leave it alone. I mean, I mean, we're finally seeing, I mean, even now, this is October and it's so warm. I mean, it's not supposed to be this warm now. And so, I don't know, because we are not, people like yourselves are sensitive to what's going on, but the people with the authority and the power, they really don't care. They only care about their own profit. And the fact that they're destroying the very planet they live on, they don't care. And so we have to ask ourselves, what can we do? I mean, this is it, just, trying to do things in a simple way, but, I think the frustration that a lot of people feel is that however much they try not to cause damage and to make things better, does it have much point? When then some big organization comes in and completely, destroys everything around it without the slightest care or consideration for what is happening. So this is the problem, as we all know. You can have all these environmental conferences and everybody, comes up with some lovely ideas, but what effect that really will have at this time, I can't say. And people start to feel despairing. The young people also feel very despairing now because, what kind of planet are they inheriting? Yes, it's not a very happy scenario because it's very difficult to know what people can do enough to make a real difference. When it's, we have so little power. Sorry, it's not very, I mean, it is very sad. I mean, I lived in India for many, many years, but even Himachal, you can see. Yeah. That road that leads from the main road to here used to be all fields. Now it's all houses and shops. And every day you blink and another supermarket's come up. It's happened so quickly. And what to do? I don't know. If I knew, I would become world famous. Nobody really seems to know how to stop, because they're in some kind of, high-powered car which is just racing down and eventually it's going to crash. But in the meantime, how to get it to slow down. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, my next question that someone asked was about what do we do with this despair?
Well, I think the one thing we have to do is not to plug in to that dark energy. There is not, apart from the environment, there, of course, as we all know, there are so many wars happening at this time, and humans are clever at destroying. And so their armaments are more and more sophisticated and more lethal. And so there is all the wars going on, and then all the depredation around in the oceans, in the land, in the sky. And it's very easy to become, well, especially in these war zones, you become not only very paranoid, which is understandable, but also full of negative emotions. You know, I was thinking in America right now with the elections coming up, and there's so much mutual hatred and suspicion and aggression and fear and all these very, very negative emotions, even from good people, sometimes especially from good people. And so I do feel it's very important that we should really try, be realistic. Yes, you know, we're happily destroying our planet, but at the same time not to plug into that dark energy of paranoia and hatred and diversiveness and so forth. I mean, we should all remember that despite our actions, actually, all beings would rather be happy than be miserable. That all of us would rather feel okay than not feel okay. And that has nothing to do with religion, race, gender, nationality, or even being human. Because animals, birds, fish, insects, they would all rather be happy than not happy. When it's hot, the dogs lie in the shade. When it's cold, they lie in the sun. Why? Because they want to feel okay. And, you know, if I had an ant here, and I went like that, it would run away. Why? Because it thinks, harm. I must save myself. So, all beings want happiness. And if we thought of our planet, if we take photo out of space on our planet, if you get through all the satellites, a lot of it is covered in pollution. We can see it. We're polluting the air. But a deeper level of pollution is our psychic pollution. That if we could photograph our psychic pollution, the anger, the fear, the aggression that is put out in the media and in people's hearts, then that would be a very thick black cloud of all these negative emotions. And it's very important not to get caught up in that. It sounds like a kind of New Age cliche, but really what we need is love. Love means wishing well. May you be well, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering. Just to visualize that. And to start, as the Buddha himself advised, with ourselves. Because we cannot really give out something which we don't have. I mean, if you're thirsty and I wanted you to drink, first I have to fill the cup. If it's empty or full of poison, then it will not be of any use. First we have to fill it with pure water, then you can drink. And so likewise, we have to make friends with ourselves. Be kind to ourselves. It doesn't mean being, you know, selfish and self-absorbed, but it does mean that we are at peace with ourselves. Wishing ourselves to be well and happy, not endlessly putting ourselves down, criticizing ourselves, and having a civil war inside our own heart. When we feel at peace and forgiving towards ourselves, then we can share it with others. And by putting out this warm, kind light and energy of reconciliation instead of hatred, that also can help. Because our thoughts do have power and precede all our speech and actions. Everything that we say and do depends on what we are thinking. So it's very important for ourselves, for those we live around, our family, our colleagues, our friends, and more, the whole world. If only we could think kind thoughts, this world would be a totally different place. But because we think negative thoughts, then our negative speech and negative actions, or even just a sense of defeat, follow. So it would be good in your own space and coming together as you are now as a group, just to sit and generate kindness, peace, goodwill. Really thinking how wonderful if we could transform our own space and then further and further until the whole world is enshrouded with light and love and kindness and peacefulness. That much we can do. And the more people that do that, the more it will have power. Like when you go to a pilgrimage place, back to pilgrimages, you go to a pilgrimage place that is somewhere that people have been going for a long time, you feel it. You know, you go in. I mean, as a Buddhist, I think of Bodh Gaya. I mean, Gaya is crazy, but as soon as you go through the gates into the actual pilgrimage place where the Buddha attained enlightenment, you can feel the change of energy. Because, why? Because of all the thousands, probably millions of people who have gone there with a heart of devotion. It becomes tangible. Just as if you go to a place where something really bad happened, then you can feel it, even you don't know what it was. I mean, one time when I was in Poland, we went to Auschwitz, to the concentration camp there, and it's just buildings. You know, I mean, there's nothing to see except the buildings where the people were kept and the gas chambers, which are just big rooms. But you know something really, really bad happened there. There's so much sadness. Just, you can feel it, it's heavy. And pilgrimage place is the opposite. You feel light and something really special and good happened here. So our thoughts are important. Thoughts, and from that, whatever words we have, whatever actions we have, even in a small space, in your family, in your workplace, with your neighbors, with everybody that we meet, to cultivate a kind heart. So, you know, it's just a mini thing, but then more kind hearts coming together, then more kind hearts coming together, you know, nothing is impossible.
You've answered many questions already.
Oh, good.
As mental health practitioners, how do we ensure that we are in touch with our ethics on an everyday basis? Ethics.
Ethics.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the basic ethic is non-harming. And the Buddha set down 5 basic precepts which are all based on non-harming. How many of you know about the 5 precepts? Okay. So, the Buddha set down these precepts. These precepts are not commandments. Thou shalt not, but they are considered to be rules of training so that we can try to live in this world harmlessly. Even if we don't do much good, at least we don't harm. That's the first thing. You can't make a precept about, you know, being kind or enlightened or anything like that. But you can say, don't kill. So the first precept, the whole idea of the precepts is that any being, not human beings just, but animals, insects, birds, anything, any being can be in our presence and not be afraid that we will harm them. Right? So therefore, since to each one their own life is most dear, most precious thing any being has is their own life, the first precept is not to take life of any being as much as possible. That any being would feel safe in our presence. Know that we don't want to harm it. And that we respect the fact that it has a life, and to each being their own life is the most precious thing they have. Why should we take it? So, the first precept is against taking life. The second precept is against taking what is not given. That means basically stealing. So also people can feel that their property is safe with us. We're not going to, you know, take it out. And also, I would say that also includes if we lend people something or we borrow something, that we give it back, right? And we give it back in as good an order as we received it. So we respect other people's property. The third precept is sexual misconduct. Sexual misconduct means that we do not use our sexuality in any way that could possibly bring future negative repercussions either to the person concerned or to ourselves. In other words, that we are responsible for our sexuality and we don't harm others through our own self-indulgence. Then the fourth precept is against lies. Our speech should be truthful so people can trust us. And we shouldn't try to cheat anybody or lie to anybody. And also our speech should be kind and non-divisive, meaning I don't tell you something against that one over there so that you cease to be friends. And not just a lot of senseless chatter. That what we say should have real meaning and not just distract our own mind and other people's mind. That we should have responsible speech. We are the one animal on this planet that uses speech the most. No other animal has such language skills as humans. And so that is a huge responsibility to keep our speech truthful, kind, non-divisive, and sensible, not just a lot of yap, 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 and gossip, and all sorts of useless things to which we usually entertain ourselves and distract other people with. So speech is important. We should have good speech, kind speech, truthful speech. And then the fifth precept is against intoxicants. Buddhism is very concerned with the mind and learning how to tame our mind and eventually train the mind to transform it and eventually to transcend the ordinary conceptual thinking mind. So therefore, alcohol and drugs and everything else which disturb the mind and take away our control, our mastery of our own mind. People, when they are, on drugs and drink, it doesn't bring out the best in them. On the whole, it usually brings out the worst. And most crimes, as we know, are committed by people under the influence of intoxication, and also, of course, domestic violence and so forth. It's usually the result of drink. So we are trying to have a calm, sober, clear mind in which gradually we become the masters of our mind instead of the slaves of our mind. And so these are ethics. And ethics are like, to my mind, they're like a fence. We are going to cultivate our meditation skills. We need to make sure while we are growing a Bodhi tree in our heart, only little saplings coming up, we have to be sure that wild animals don't come in and eat them up. So that is ethics. It's like a fence. So that even if our mind is a little bit wild, nonetheless our actions will not be harmful. And so usually in the Buddhist tradition, when people go for refuge to the Buddha, his teaching, and to the community, they likewise take these 5 precepts, which is, as I said, they're not commandments. Nobody's going to come down with a thunderbolt and, kind of completely zap us if we break something. But we try our best. They are rules of training, how to be at least a decent human being that doesn't cause harm to others and people can trust. So ethics are very important, especially the ethic of non-harming.
We engage with Aboriginal and indigenous people in the work that we do, and how can we be in right relationship with them?
I think to respect them, to respect their culture, to respect their beliefs, and not to try to make them into the mainstream if they don't want to go there. I mean, one of the problems in our modern age, and especially now with more and more, like television and things like this, that people are losing their identity, who they were, and they're trying to make themselves into something who they're not. And it's very sad because, as we know, with the loss of languages, indigenous languages, customs, that inner sense of well-being from being who you are, because now you have to be somebody else who you're not. And it's not that they're becoming something better than what they were before. One sees this very much in the Himalayas, because there are many, I lived for many years in Lahul, and now when I go back I find it shocking because it's so changed. And the people are losing their sense of their own being, who they were, right? And trying to now be something which is not even worthwhile. I mean, it's not like they're becoming something that you particularly need to be. Who they were was absolutely fine, and they were like that for thousands of years. And now suddenly they're being told that they're primitive and that they have to change and they have to become more like, you know, the people in the middle. And so they feel lost because they have lost what they had, and they cannot really become something different. I mean, the problem is, and it's everywhere, in India and everywhere, is that nowadays people are relinquishing their own culture, which was very rich and nourishing, to take up junk culture, basically. It's not even worth anything, most of the stuff that people are getting into now. I mean, it's like you stop eating all the organic foods which you used to raise, and now you all want to go and eat at McDonald's. I mean, you're giving up something worthwhile for something which is just worthless. And that's where it's very sad. So I think it's very important for you to go out and encourage people to respect who they are and not worry about exchanging something which is very precious for something which is bright and shining but basically worthless. It's very hard. I mean, it's going to happen anyway because the pressure and the exploitation is so strong. But as much as you can, to encourage people to respect themselves and respect each other and respect their culture. What else can you do? You see it everywhere. Everything is just given up for. It's like, you know, you give up crystal for plastic. You've given up something really worthwhile for something which really is junk. What to do? It's a very interesting times that we live in, where everything is changing so fast. I mean, before things took time to evolve, but now it's almost overnight that we see the changes. As I say, I hadn't been back to Lahul Spiti, up down the road, for many years. And when we went back, I was so shocked by the change. I just wanted to say, let's turn around and leave. I don't want to come. But we didn't, which is good, because the people are the people. And I mean, that's so lovely. But it's changing. And as children get put in government schools, their values also are changing. What is important, what is not important. Even what they're eating is changing. Everything's changing so fast. So if you are working with indigenous people, do try to encourage them to feel pride in who they are. And how wonderful and unique they are. And how very precious this has been. And not to feel ashamed of who they are. Backward tribals. Nothing backward about them. Maybe they're the most forward thinking. Because at least they kept their culture and their agriculture and everything wasn't poisonous. Yes, so encourage them. And you know, they're even often so surprised that anybody actually thinks they're anything, you know. So if you coming from one culture can encourage them to look back at themselves and see how wonderful they are and how they have to hold on to their tradition if they possibly can while making, living in the world. That's good that you're doing that. It's very hard for these people. Around the world, I mean, not just in India. Yeah. And they get exploited like anything.
Can you speak to the importance of community and Sangha? Especially in our context, what's the importance of community?
Well, again, sorry. No. You know, one time the Buddha's assistant and cousin, Ananda, said to the Buddha, you know, I've been thinking about it, Bhagavan, and I think good companionship, half the spiritual path. And the Buddha said, no, Ananda, it's the whole of the Buddha, of the spiritual path. The Buddha always felt that good companionship was extremely important. The first thing he did after his enlightenment, I mean, he sat under trees for a few weeks, but after that he walked towards Varanasi, and when he got to what is now called Sarnath, just outside of Varanasi, he met up with his erstwhile companions and taught his first sermon. And then he created a Sangha and a community. And he always said that what was most important was the flourishing and harmony of the Fourfold Sangha. He talked a lot about the Fourfold Sangha, always. Fourfold Sangha is monks, nuns, laymen, lay women. And he said if all of these four Sanghas stay together in harmony, if they study, practice, and propagate the Dharma, then the Dharma will flourish. And right up until the very end, he emphasized how important community and mutual support really is, and the importance of harmony. That we should all live together, respecting each other and caring for each other, and in general, supporting the aims, both mundane and spiritual, of each other. One of the main problems in the world today, apparently, as you must know, is loneliness. That as our cities get bigger and bigger, so people become more and more alienated from each other. The family is breaking down, and people feel so isolated, so alone. And it's like a pain in their heart. They don't really have many friends. They don't have anyone to share things with, to laugh with, to cry with. They are feeling more and more alone. So community is very, very important. The sense of friendship and, you know, just being kind to each other. It doesn't take that much to be kind. And if there are problems, then to discuss it together and solve the problems together. So that we know, I mean, human beings are actually, herd animals. And so for many people, the most painful thing in their life, they may have a nice little apartment or a house, they might have more than enough food, clothing, everything. But what they don't have are good friends. And a good friend also is considered to be someone who brings out the best in us. You know, we are very influenced by the company we keep. And so therefore also we should be careful to keep company with people who bring out the good and not the kind of people who lead us astray. But then when you have a community, in Buddhism that is the third jewel, right? The first jewel is the Buddha himself. Second is the Dharma, his teaching, the doctrine. But the third jewel is the community that supports us, that we all are working together, hand in hand. That gives us strength and confidence. And when things are difficult, there's somebody who will listen to us. When we have something happy to share, somebody who will laugh and smile and be with us in our ups and downs, and that we can trust. So community is very important, and you should give energy to that, because it's a blessing. It's a blessing to have friends, good friends, who, we share things with, and we take care of each other. And if anything goes wrong, you've got someone there to hold your hand. It's very important, especially at this time when, on the one hand, everybody's in contact with their phones, and on the other hand, they've never felt so alone. It's an irony of our time that this, now it's said to be one of the main causes of psychological imbalance is the fact that people feel, alone. You know about all this much more than I do. But I see it also with our community here, because during lockdown, we locked the gates, right? So for 2 years, nobody went out, and only delivery vans came in to deliver food. And so for 2 years, the nuns just saw each other. They didn't go home. They didn't see any visitors. They didn't do anything. They just stayed here inside. And they were so happy. I felt almost guilty, considering, all the awful things which were happening outside, and daily we would hear of, and the nuns did lots and lots of prayers. But they enjoyed being together and not going out, and just like a cloistered nunnery, right? So they were very happy that they had each other. And they stayed very harmonious, and nobody got sick. And they just carried on with their usual studies and practice. But how fortunate they were compared with so many people who at that time were trapped and couldn't go out, but didn't have anybody that they could talk to and that they could, just be friends with, companionship. So yes, please, put even some effort into being kind and friendly to each other. And if any disharmony arises, then how to resolve it in the most intelligent way so that you do stay in harmony and are companions to each other, because that's a beautiful thing. And actually, as I said, one of the precepts for speech is against divisive speech. Divisive speech means when you turn one person against another by what you say. That is considered to be a really very, very bad thing to do, to divide the Sangha. So yes, be nice to each other, right? Remember that all beings wish to be well and happy, and do your best to make them well and happy.
So your entire life, you have navigated a very patriarchal system. And some of us are in a similar position in other contexts, institutions and universities, and so, and now you know there are so many others who you have uplifted in your journey. But can you talk to us about how we should navigate that? I know you've spoken a bit, but is there anything you can say to us?
Well, of course. I mean, all religion is patriarchal, except maybe the Brahma Kumaris. I mean, so there are different people have different approaches. My approach is that if we are friendly with our Dharma brothers, there's a big monastery over there that we're under, then the Dharma brothers will be so happy with their Dharma sisters that they will do everything they can to help. It's rather like if you are an invading army, not very strong, but there's a fortress. If you come there, you know, trying to bang on the doors and shout and scream, they will pull the portcullis down. They will just close the doors, and that will be that. Whereas if you go there friendly, bearing gifts, then they open the doors and welcome you in. And then decide, you know, Dharma sisters are nice things to have. And so therefore they will do everything they can to help. And so always with this nunnery, we have been, our monastery is down the road. We have always been very grateful to the monks and the lay people there for the help that they give. And when they are not being helpful, then to push, but in a friendly way. So that what you don't want is that they should feel they're in opposition in any way. Recognize that together we can be greater than half. And so, I mean, we have been very fortunate with our monastery because the monks are lovely and the lamas have been very kind. Occasionally we'll come across things which we don't agree on. And as I say, then I just back off and then come back again. And eventually they subside and decide to help. We have a very important thing happening with our Jubilee now because we have a meditation center, a retreat center, and over in our monastery we have a very special group of monks who have been in retreat for many, many years. They have a vow of lifelong commitment to meditation. And they are sort of yogis, Tokden. And so the former Kapta Rinpoche, we have a new one, but that one, had specifically asked me in a very formal manner to revive this tradition of female yogis, Tokden Ma. And he said in Tibet there were many, now there are none, the lineage has been broken. So I always pray that you will revive this very precious yogini lineage. But our yogis there were a little reluctant. And although they were giving teachings to the nuns, they were not teaching them the specific practices which would make them Tokden Ma. And so for some years, it was a bit like hitting against the wall, but you weren't getting anywhere. But I kept reminding them that this is what we needed. And they all said, no, it's impossible. And then one day, my Lama said, oh, we've been discussing it, and now we think it is possible. So he said, yes, okay, we'll do it. And so then they began giving these special teachings to the nuns, and now we have 4 nuns who have been in retreat for 16 years. And I said, I think it's about time you boys recognize them as being Tokden Ma. And, okay. So, you know, on Thursday, then they will give these special robes. They are monks and nuns, but they wear white lower robe and a red and white striped zen, and because they have long hair. And so on Thursday, then the head Tokden will hand the robes to these 4 nuns, and in that way formally recognize them as Tokden Ma. And we're all friendly. Everybody's happy. The Lama himself is giving the robes. And yes, I mean, I think that we have to recognize that the system tends to be patriarchal because the boys stand up for themselves and women do not necessarily support each other. I think this is one of the main problems for women, is that they support the guys in authority rather than each other. So they don't really always support each other. And it's very important that they should, metaphorically speaking, hold hands. You know, we always said in India, when a girl gets married, the person she has to worry about is not her husband, but her mother-in-law and sisters-in-law. And although that's not always true, there is a truth to it, that women don't always support women. They will support the male. And so all they need to do is not be anti-male. Why? But pro-women, right? That if we support each other and respect each other and encourage each other, then there's no problem. You know, it's not that we're being against anyone. We're just recognizing that women are every bit as much human beings as the men are. And there wouldn't be any human beings at all if there were not women. So, and women are strong, you know? I mean, when we had workers here building, you know, the men would be doing the chipping for the stones, the women would be cutting the bricks and whatever, and holding their babies and the little ones. And at the end of the day, the men would all sit around in a circle smoking bidis, and the women would be cleaning, cooking, taking care of the kids. Who's weak? So women should appreciate each other, then men will also appreciate, and we will appreciate men, and men appreciate each other already. So then, you know, we're all part of the human family. And I don't think it really helps to, you know, jump up and down and shout. It more works better if, you know, the lovely ladies will smile sweetly and just get on with doing what they want to do.
So when that anger shows up, which is you described like hitting against a wall, in this process, what do we do with that anger that comes up?
Well, we should look at it. I mean, any negative feelings that come up, we should look at them. And for example, if we feel frustration, it's probably more frustration than anything else. You know, instead of pushing it down or pretending it's not there, we should allow it to come up and say, hello, anger. Now, what's your problem? What do you really feel? Where do you really feel it? How do you think about it? And to dialogue and make friends with your anger and your fear. And to listen and then try to think, what can I do that will help the situation? And maybe even your anger, the anger will give you an idea. Well, maybe you could try something else, you know, a different way. Banging on the door doesn't help. So maybe make a phone call. I mean, eventually there are other ways. Anger doesn't help because if we're in conflict, then there's more conflict coming from that side too. So you're just bashing each other up, and it's not resolving the problem. So the point is to try to see the situation, how we feel, how they might feel or not, and then try to come to some compromise, some understanding between the two. I mean, of course, you're always told that you must have patience and forbearance. But along with that patience and forbearance, you could still walk forward, right? And come to some kind of mutual understanding. I mean, this is something everywhere in the planet. I mean, it's not something which is just coming up, or it's just, India. It's everywhere. And women, one thing women have now, which they didn't have before, is education. You know, previously, even in good families, girls were taught domestic arts, and but they weren't really taught how to think. And nowadays, women are every bit as recognized as every bit as intelligent. I mean, of course they are. And so use that intelligence. Think it through, how to deal with the situation in a way which will bring about reconciliation rather than more conflict. I mean, if you're all psychologists and psychiatrists, you must, one time, anger. I was staying, where were we? Guatemala. And we were staying in one of these B&Bs, and they had a little library. And there was this book, it was this big. And it was there's a series of books called The Dummy's Guide to This and That. It was The Dummy's Guide to Overcoming Anger. This thick. It was quite good, actually. I started reading it. part of it. A lot of it was Buddhist stuff, which they didn't mention, that it was, maybe in the foreword he mentioned it was Buddhist. A lot of Buddhist techniques on overcoming anger. But, you know, they don't get a book this big, Dhamma's Guide to Overcoming Greed and Desire. That would be this big. Nobody wants to overcome their greed and desire, but everybody wants to overcome their anger. And we can, right? Because it's a force. And to transform that force is a skillful means. But just by retaliating doesn't work. We have to make friends with all beings, including men. I think that's enough.
Last question? Just the last question is around what you echoed some of the despair that we also feel, that you also feel, but what gives you hope?
For what?
For the world right now.
Well, we have to, you know, I mean, I always think, okay, in Buddhist tradition, there will be in this eon, you know, the world comes into being and then disappears and then comes back into being. In this eon, there will be 1,000 Buddhas. Now, we have only had 7 up to now. So we have 993 to go. And you cannot appear as a Buddha in the world until every single word of the Dharma of the previous Buddha is finished. You cannot have 2 Buddhas simultaneously, their Dharma. So, that gives us an awful lot of time. We've still got 997 Buddhas to go. Wow. So, that's hopeful. You know, even though we might mess up with the planet, maybe we'll learn. You know, because when I was young, nobody talked about the environment. Nobody talked about, you know, the fact that we're polluting the world. Nobody talked about any of these things. You didn't think about it. We just got over a war, right? There'd been 2 wars, but nobody was thinking about the environment, the forests and the oceans and the mountains and the snow level and everything like that. Nowadays, everybody's thinking about it. They might not be doing much, but they are thinking. And especially young people are thinking. And so more and more people are conscious of how we are destroying our planet. Before they never thought about it. And so that's hopeful. I mean, presumably in schools and colleges, people are discussing this, thinking about this. They might be full of despair, or they might be coming together to think how to resolve the problem. But at least now, the first thing is to acknowledge that this is happening. Hey, look, you know, I mean, all the glaciers are melting. I mean, and it's true. You can see it. But at least we're aware. And from that awareness, who knows what will come? I mean, so there is hope. I don't say that tomorrow it's all going to be resolved, but more and more people are protesting, like when they want to do this fracking, whatever that may be, everybody protests. And they're recognizing now that we are completely raping this planet. And the planet's fighting back, have you noticed? Mm-hmm. Fires, water, hurricanes. Huh? Yeah. Earthquakes, volcanoes. We can't ignore it. anymore. We can see for ourselves, and as soon as it hits us, then we'll try to do something, right? And so who knows? Maybe we'll get some responsible politicians finally who will set in action, you know, things for cleaning things up. I heard today somebody mention that they're banning big cruisers from going into Venice anymore, down the canals. Well, that's good. So slowly, slowly, people are waking up, recognizing that we're in crisis. And as it hits people more and more, especially in the places like America and Europe and places like that, where they have they're seeing it. On one side floods, on the other side fires, hurricanes, so many people dying, so many buildings and towns destroyed. You can't deny it anymore. So, first thing is to open your eyes, and then when you see, then we can maybe, it's not too late yet. So yes, I think there's hope. I mean, human beings are a difficult species, but there's goodness in the world. The media only tells us all the bad stuff, but far beyond that is all the good stuff that they don't report, that is happening all the time around us, people doing extraordinarily beautiful things and truly doing what they can to benefit as many beings as they can. That doesn't get reported, but it's there. And goodness far outweighs all the things which we're doing which are not good. So the other hope is that our essential nature is perfect. In Buddhist terminology, we all have Buddha nature. Our essential nature is beautiful. It might be covered over. We might not notice it in ourselves or others, but it's there. Fundamentally, we are good. And that's very hopeful. If fundamentally we were not good, then we would be in trouble. But our true nature is beautiful. All we have to do is recognize it in ourselves and in others. So, yes, there is always a cause for hope.